Okay, so welcome back. Let's have a quick look at the drum room setup on this. This is, in this instance, two stereo setups. There's no mono room in this instance. I think I just didn't bother with this. The image that you saw in the last video of the overhead setup, you might have noticed that the drums are side on in the in Studio One in Brighton Electric, and it just didn't leave a good position that I felt the mono room really captured the whole drum kit. So I've just gone for a couple of stereo setups instead. I'm using the let's have a quick listen to them individually first. This is the only in common with all the rest there is this alignment plugin. The first stereo pairing is the AAR88, the Blumlein ribbon microphone, the big black loofah looking thing. That's relatively close. Trying to it's fairly close. I think it was about 2 or 3 feet away, and because of that, there's quite a difference in the left and right image as far as the kick and the snare are concerned. So you can hear that now. So it's pretty evident that the kick and snare are on different sides, but that's not a bad thing sometimes. That helps to generate, some stereo width. There's quite a lot of cymbal information in here, and that's partly because it was compressed on the day just to give the session a sense of impetus. Would it have been more prudent to record them without that level of compression on? Yes, maybe so. Have I talked about doing that in as good practice in lessons before? Yes, I have. Did I do it? No. I knew I was going to be compressing these rooms pretty heavily. I did kind of regret that I kind of compressed them as hard as I did on the day, because the cymbal information is pretty big in this, and I spent quite a bit of time undoing that. Here's how that happens. The first plugin on this is, what you might notice is that these stereo room have the same processing on them. And again, this is to try and keep the phase alignment of these room sounds as accurate as possible. So there's an EQ. It's active. It's giving a little bit of an energy bump to the drums, the toms and the kick and the snare energy down here in this low mid zone. Adding a little bit of resonance down there as well, but again, I will be countering that later on. It's also taking a little bit of the wash and power out of the cymbals and leaving some of the high energy in. Then there's this plugin here, which is a multi-band compressor. This is only really working on the high frequencies here. What this is doing is this is turning down the EQ. It's working as an expander. So this band here is listening and reacting to the low frequency information, the kind of drum hits, and opening up, kind of expanding the high frequencies just for a short period of time. This is to add back the attack frequencies, the high frequency attack information that has been cut out by this EQ. So you can kind of see this is working off of the drum hits just to add some high frequency attack information back to the stick attack. So that's just responding to the kick and snare hits and the tom hits and triggering off of that information there. This is the, I'm not sure you can see this, but I'm waiting for a beach ball to stop. This is the second mic. This is, or second pairing. It's a pair of 414s set at kind of a sort of 15 feet distance from the drum kit at corners of the room. This is also the room pairing that I left set up when we rigged the bass amp. So you'll hear those mics used on the bass amp to create some common room sound, to give the impression that the rhythm section were in the same room at the same time, just to add that common tone. You can see that there's a similar, this is the sound of the mics on their own first. Now with the processing added. And then that attack. So that's diminishing that symbol information in there, but allowing it to open up very quickly to allow the attack through. There is this third channel of room here. This is me adding in a fake room. I was still not happy with the symbol balance. I couldn't take any more symbol energy out here without it sounding really dramatic and over processed and filtered and nasty. So I'm now trying to equalize the energy by countering it with some made up stuff. So this reverb plugin that I'll show you in a minute is being fed from this kick drum mic, these two snare mics here, and these three tom mics. So that's the close mics being balanced into a reverb. The reverb was chosen very deliberately. It is a studio. It's a little bit of EQ just beforehand. Let's see what that's doing. Not actually doing anything right now. Okay, so that just passive. Maybe I tried some experimenting to tailor that somewhat. Didn't need to. It's just a different balance of the drums into that reverb, and this reverb was chosen because of its. This is a plugin that emulates rooms, specifically a convolution reverb, and this is of similar size and sound to my ear to Brighton Electric, so I've tried to pick a room that sounds very similar. I would like to go in and convolute the Brighton Electric drum room in order to have that on here, and it's possible. It may be something I do in the future. Let's have a little listen to this. Obviously I would require Brighton Electric's permission to do that. One sec. Let's have a quick listen to how this sounds with this reverb on. Okay, that's the sound of that. Let me add that into the mix of these three, and you can hear how that blends in. And you can hear that's adding a much more kind of direct punch from the drums, or the tubs, as I've labelled them in this instance. Okay, so that then goes into this room bus, and that has a mid-side processor being applied. So this is a Waves plugin. You add it at the front of your chain. This converts it to mid-side, and so instead of left and right now on this left and right channel, this is now being treated as mid and side. So the middle information in the stereo image I can control independently to the side information. The middle information is controlled by the left channel, the side information by the right. So that means that any subsequent plugins, such as this saturation plugin again that I add afterwards, is now the left channel is saturating only the middle information, the common middle information, and the right channel is saturating the sides. So now I'm mid-side processing the rooms. That's also the case. Let me show you the saturation, how that's changing it. Again, I'm trying to suppress the cymbals in this. I really want these rooms just to add weight to these drums. I'm trying to emulate the feel of being in the room when Will plays the drums. There's an EQ after that, and again, that's now, as opposed to a stereo, left and right option on here. You can see there's slightly different setups. I'm EQing the middle differently to the right, to the sides. Let's have a listen to that plugin engaged. And again, you can hear now I'm dramatically attenuating the cymbal tone in both of these setups. This is over, especially in the wide information. I just mute the sides. You can hear that that's a dramatic cut. That is then sent to a hardware insert. If we have a quick look at the hardware insert photographs that I've got in this snapshot plugin, you can see that I've got my vintage 1178, which is a kind of stereo version of an 1176. That's working in AB mode because the left-hand compressor is, the left-hand detector is listening to the middle information, the right-hand is listening to the side information. So I've now turned this into a mid-side compressor. It's also before that though got this TD3, this transient designer. So this number 3 is working on the middle information. So I'm adding attack to the mid information, shortening it to make it more percussive, and on the side information, not doing anything to the attack transients because they're crushed already, but I am extending further. This is before the compressor, so I'm trying to exaggerate these big drum hits, overpower them into the compressor so it reacts to those rather than the cymbals. That hardware insert comes back into. Let's hear the different. I can't play you how that adds in until I play the rest of it. But let's see what's next. There's a soothe that's working on mid side still until this plugin here, the Waves plugin, converts that back to stereo image. So it's being converted to mono here and then converted back to stereo, converted to mid side here, then converted back to stereo here. And then there's an active EQ after that, which is just tailoring things after this compression ratio and compression setting that I've added via hardware. Okay, you can see it's just taking out, I'm just now controlling this low information that I've added. I quite often do that. You'll see me do that quite a lot in mix. Actively boost frequencies that I then want the compressor to react more to later on, and then have to counter it in an EQ afterwards. This is the difference between these two sounds. We've got the kit room without the hardware inserts, and then the kit room with the hardware inserts. That's first without, and now with. Now obviously that's a dramatic boost. It's difficult to compare the two, but you can hear that it's adding a little bit more snap and excitement and taking some of the weight out. The compressors will do that. I've also decided to add a soothe after the fact, after this hardware insert. So once this has been bounced, this one on the right hand side here is a printed version of this, so a bounced version. Then I'm obviously taking a little bit of this low energy out again. I'm just trying to stop it resonating so much in those woolly low mid 200 to 1K zone. And you can see this has also got this send, which is taking it out of my drum bus to parallel clean. I'll explain that a little later on again. Okay, so that's the rooms done. Actually, it might be worth mentioning in this little video quickly just the effects on here. I think I will. So there is this reverb, which is a spring reverb. This is something I learned off of a great engineer called Mike Palanconi, the inventor of the Drum Drops brand of drum samples. He's a great dub. Prince Fatty is his producer name. He's a great dub producer. It's an old reggae trick. He was an expert in researching how old records were made, and that's what the Drum Drop series is all about. But this is an old reggae trick. Underside snare fed into a spring reverb. You get this sound. And you'd think that would be odd, but it does really work in a drum scenario. It just adds extension to the underside of the snare and gives the snare a little bit of life down there. There is also a tom reverb, which is big and gated to add drama. It's a bit Phil Collins, if I'm honest, but I like it. It's something I use quite commonly. So it's a reverb. There's a delay there, just adding some width to the reverb first and a bit of pre-delay. Then it goes into this really cool Sound Toys plate reverb, which is set fairly short, and that is then gated. Once the beach ball stops again, you can see that is also that's gated to the dry tom signal, so that it cuts off the long reverb tail much shorter. It makes it sound a bit more percussive, and then an active EQ afterwards. The Lexicon reverb is mainly, this is sent from kick, snare and toms, but it's mostly snare. This is recorded in to the channel, to the drum tracks, because I then free my. It's a hardware unit. I have a vintage 80s Lexicon reverb, which I love, and it's a sound that you hear on a lot of records, and it's the sort of sound that just makes the snare sound like a record. There's no other way to describe it. I'll try it. I'll play how it sounds on its own first. It's a non-linear reverb, so it's a reverse room. It's a very unnatural sound, but it adds a really dramatic width to the drums. I'm going to try very hard to play the drums on their own here, but these solo modes were not working for me earlier on. Let me try. No, again, can't figure out why that's not working right now. Let me try this instead. Nope, still not working. I'll come back to you on that one. Okay, that works. You can hear how it's adding real kind of a splay, throwing the tail of the snare out into the wides. So the reverb is fired out into the edges of the mix, and I feel that just gives the snare such a great size. It's a trick that I was shown by an engineer called Slipperman, and he was a New York engineer, made a lot of great records. Taking Back Sunday, one of their big records in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s. Anyway, it's a great trick for adding impact and dynamics or dynamism to the snare. We'll leave it there for now. We'll talk about the parallel processing that's going on and the overall drum bus in the next little video. That's it for now. Speak to you soon.